Okay guys, my review of the Moto X Pure or Style. I know I'm a little bit overdue, but at least I already got the chance not to review it just with Lollipop, but also already with Marshmallow. And in this video I will also take a look at if the update was for better or for worse. So let's go ahead and check the full review. Okay, so before I'm going to talk about the design and build quality, heads up first, since English isn't my native language, I have quite some hard time getting these takes failure free, and trying it over and over again kind of makes me sick by now. So if I make any mistakes, I will just leave them in and I hope you don't mind them. Okay, so let's start with the size comparison. Here with a 5-incher, as you can see, noticeably wider, noticeably taller and noticeably thicker. But considering this is 0.7 inches bigger, that's actually not that bad. Comparing it here with the OnePlus One, almost the same height, almost the same width, and just a tad thicker. So they did pretty much their best job they could do, making this device as compact as possible for a 5.7 incher. But in the end, it still isn't 5.7 incher, which makes it unwieldy and big after all. If you have small hands, it's also a little bit top heavy, since it's so tall, but it's definitely not thick because it feels quite thin since you mostly hold on to this and have this nice curve here on the back. So overall feel is great, but it's still a little bit on the bigger side. The material here is really nicely done, but at least I would wish for it to be a little bit softer to provide more grip. Of course, we have different options like leather and wood as well. In terms of build quality, absolutely fine, absolutely great actually, because it's super solid, no creaking nor creaking. Just great, super substantial and solid feel in the hand. Here we have the dual tone flash, the camera, headphone jack at the top, SD card and SIM card tray. Left side is clean. Here we have the micro USB and here we have the buttons. They click a little bit, but the tactile feedback is quite nice. The power button is also a little bit textured. I would just wish for them to either switch places or go a little bit lower, because this position would be the perfect one for me. It's not a huge issue since you will mostly just turn it on this way since we have adaptive screen. Before I'm going to talk about the display, one thing that I have to tell you. I'm using it at 60%. Usually I use all my devices at 100%, but if I do this, everything will get completely overexposed. So I decided to use 60%. So we have a QHD 5.7 inch screen and we have this odd little issue if I switch position. So now we have it. Maximum brightness, as I said, is really great. Sunlight reliability should be just fine. It's also really sharp, really nice job here. Absolutely no complaints here at all. White level is also really well done. It's slightly on the warmer side, but if you don't have an accurate device side by side all the time, it's absolutely okay. Blacks though, maybe not that great. You won't see it here on the video. They are slightly with a red-gray hue. So the black is definitely not super deep. It's okay, but it's definitely the weakest point here. The colors, I'm using the adaptive or vivid mode here. There is also a more basic mode with more natural colors, but I think here they do quite a nice balance between nicely saturated but still accurate enough not to be completely overblown. Colors really seem natural, they do a great job. The viewing angles are also absolutely solid, which you won't see that much on the video because of the lighting. It's absolutely fine here as well. So colors are nice, the white point is good, black is not perfect, but job done just fine. Absolutely overall still an absolute great display, mostly because it's very vivid and very popping in your eyes, even though it's not an AMOLED display. So let's check the sound here. Okay. If you think that's not loud enough, no problemo. Let's try another song. I think it's pretty obvious this sound is amazing. First of all, extremely loud. This is pretty much one of the loudest, if not loudest ever speaker that I've heard. Stereo, front facing, absolutely great. And you could even hear a little bit of bass, really solid mids. Highs tend to distort on the last 3 volume steps, but this is no issue because even without those 3 steps it would be still more than loud enough. But the distortion is mostly just audible on maybe lower quality sound, so don't worry about that. The sound overall is absolutely great, more than satisfying, absolute enjoyment to use that, absolutely great. So let's check the performance then. Here we are in the browser. As you can see, very smooth. So the browsing experience, absolutely great. It does jitter right now for some reason, which it usually doesn't. Believe me, browsing performance, absolutely great. Here, for example, in Phoenix, as you can see, very smooth. There is some little lag from time to time, and I just think still the Snapdragon 810, the Kirin 945 or the Exynos perform overall just a tad better. But in general, I can't complain about the performance at all, because everything for the average user especially is mostly smooth enough, and even a power user shouldn't really have an issue here. As you can see here, even Google Plus works really nice. So don't mind the performance, it's really on a high level, quite responsive. What was really great to see was the really good multitasking performance, because you could switch between apps very nicely, and it kept a lot of apps running in the RAM. So the RAM management is definitely great. I've used this device on Lollipop for 1 week and the last 2 days on Marshmallow. There's not really a difference in terms of performance between those two versions, so don't expect any performance boost here. But what about gaming performance? And here, as you can maybe see, I am not really that impressed. I'm not really that pleased, because the frame rates are quite low, not quite consistent. The more action is on the screen, the worse it gets. So it's even a little bit worse than on, for example, the LG G4, which was actually quite okay, but this definitely struggles a little bit more, and I noticed this. So if you are heavy into gaming, even though it would be great for it because of the great display and great sound, the gaming performance, yeah, not that convincing. The overall performance in general, though, is absolutely great. So let's talk about the battery life. 1 hour and 20 for a full charge is absolutely great. As for the battery stats, I can't show you anything, because since I moved from Lollipop to Marshmallow, I deleted all the stats that I had. But I can tell you so far, over the course of 1 day, I had 3.5, 2 times 3 hours and 45, and 2 times 3 hours and 55 in terms of screen on time. After the Marshmallow update, though, I did a full factory reset, and then I got 2 times 4 hours and 5, so slightly over 4 hours. I would say this is definitely okay. It seems to be slightly better with Marshmallow, I guess mostly due to dose, but even in terms of use drain, it seemed a little bit better. So job done here well. I would say the Marshmallow update is quite good, and let's talk about Marshmallow actually, because it is running 6.0. As you can see here, it's still, since it's Motorola, mostly stock. A few additions, of course, are adaptive display. You have Moto Assist, which you actually don't have anymore, because that one is out of the Moto suite. We only have Moto Voice, Moto Display, and I'm not quite sure what the third Moto is, because Assist was kind of replaced with the Do Not Disturb mode, which works fine. You can adjust it if you want, not the Do Not Disturb. And since we have Marshmallow now, we have the System UI tuner. You can rearrange and also delete quick tiles if you want, because I got rid of quite a lot of them to make it a little bit cleaner. Otherwise, you have the normal tray here, as you can see, normal features. You have a few Moto features, not too much, mostly very clean, mostly very nice. I'm missing a few little tweaks and maybe customizations, like for the navbar or so, but if you prefer stock, you will definitely have a great experience, and already having Marshmallow is definitely a bonus. So now let's talk about the camera. For stills first, I gotta say it produces some really nice and very sharp shots. The autofocus does a great job. Sometimes it has a little bit of trouble actually knowing what it should focus on, but once it does that really well. The sweet spot of this focus point seems to be a little bit narrow. I noticed that on some of the macro shots. If you do more of landscape footage, then it's absolutely fine. Accuracy was really nice, color balance was very good, exposure was very nice, did an overall great job, and it's really easy to get great shots. You don't need too much effort for it. Also, low light capability was absolutely solid, maybe not really great, not really grainy, a little bit more on the blurry side, but still absolutely convincing. Now, as for the video qualities, I gotta say, what I like maybe the most is the fluid and smooth transition of the autofocus from something macro, from something of a macro shot to something of a landscape shot. It did a really nice smooth transition, and it really captures and focuses all of the objects very nice. Exposure also very nice. If you move, the movement itself of the video seemed a little bit jittery, but only a little bit. And overall, I'm absolutely pleased with the camera as well. So for stills, really good, and even pretty much on the same level for video because of the maybe best feature that would be the autofocus that I noticed some phones actually have a little bit of a harder time to get with. So I think that's pretty much it for the detailed part. Okay, since I'm still sane, I will make this my final cut. I just did like 5 retakes, and I think this will have to be the last because I don't want to happen what did happen last time. So recap time, design and build quality. I gotta say they did an absolutely great job making this device feel as compact as possible. It really is, for a 5.7 incher, really nice and comfortable to use, but still is a 5.7 incher. It still is a little bit unwieldy. It's a little bit on the heavier side, which did fatigue my fingers and made it hard to use for an extended period of time. Maybe that's me being a pussy, but maybe it's not. I just prefer smaller phones in general. But the build quality, absolutely great. Feels super substantial, feels super solid and really comfortable still in the hand because of all the great curves. Design, top. Build quality, even more so. I gotta say, really, really well done. About the display though, if it wouldn't have been for the slightly weaker black levels, being a little bit more on the slightly reddish gray side, this would have been an absolutely amazing display, which it still is in some way, because very, very bright. Weaker contrast levels than I expected it to be, but therefore extremely vibrant and vivid colors. After all, they seem a little bit over boosted though, just in terms of brightness. White level is absolutely fine and the sharpness is absolutely great, which overall makes it still a more than enjoyable and really, really great experience. And if you don't use it at night all the time with mostly black screens, this is definitely a non-issue. Whatever I complain about is on the highest possible level. Keep that in mind. Same goes for the sound, because the sound is absolutely amazing, super loud, really nicely balanced with some bass, nice mids and really clear highs, but it still tends to distort on at least the last 3 levels. But once again, even without those 3 levels, which it only distorts on low quality audio, it is still more than loud enough. With front facing stereo, provides an absolute great media experience with the great nice screen and this loud speaker. So top. Now about the performance. Really, really good, just not quite great. It can compete with an S810, it can compete with the Kirin, and it can compete with the Exynos. This makes it no slouch though, because in overall general tasks, very, very smooth, really good multitasking capabilities, overall quite maybe not really snappy, but still very lightweight feeling. And that makes it still more than capable, like I said, also complaining on the highest possible level. It is able to deliver a better performance, but not that much that it would really make a difference. The gaming performance though was a little bit on the weaker side, just not as smooth and not with high enough frame rates as I would expect, and yes, that had to happen. Now, what about the battery life? I would say with about 4 hours it is absolutely decent. Not mind-blowing, but definitely not weak, and I would say this is 4 hours of screen on time. On the G4 I said 3.5 to 4, but this one was definitely more towards solid 4 hours with a screen on time, like I said, but the brightness was at about 35%, I would say, which though is really bright. 100%, I would just never had to use something like that. Software, stock Android. I think everyone loves it, loves the design, loves the functionality, and with the enhanced or additions of Motorola, it's even better. It's maybe not particularly something that I really use. Adaptive display just doesn't attract me so much, and the rest, but it's definitely a nice bonus over stock Android. I would wish for a few more small tweaks and enhancements, but I can't really complain about the software either. Now, the last thing, camera. What should I say? 4 stills, absolutely, really, really strong. Absolutely satisfying. I had no issues with it. The narrow sweet spot of the sharpness was a little bit something that I didn't expect to see, but is still totally fine because it has a nice bokeh effect. On more landscape photos it was even better because they're not so much noticeable. Low light performance was absolutely fine. Video performance was absolutely great, if not for the slightly jittery video that maybe can be resolved either anyways, and therefore the autofocus worked really, really nice, exposure and everything. So the camera is definitely not the deal breaker anymore like it was already on a few phones of Motorola the past years. The camera, great, absolutely top, and pretty much on the same high level that the phone is in general. So where does it stand now in comparison with all the other flagships this year? And I gotta say, especially due to the price, at least in the USA, with $399, it is extremely appealing and it is pretty much the best affordable flagship you can get. Now, I live in Germany, in Europe, and here we have to pay some extra money for it. In this particular case, it's not $399, but €499, which makes it less affordable. At least on Amazon you can get the standard black and white version right about now for $430, which makes it way more appealing again. But still, I would wish for it to be at least closer here in Europe, and I think it would have sold a lot more if the price would have been closer to something in the US in comparison. But still, it doesn't make the quality of the phone any less. The phone itself can't do anything for the price, and for 400 or even for 500 you definitely get a great package, especially great for media consumption because of the speaker and of the display. And since it is so big and delivers this great experience, the size is still absolutely manageable. Definitely not for everyone, because for me, it in the end, after using it for about 1.5 weeks, it's still too big. If they would have made a 5.2 incher, then I would have maybe been all over it. As it is right now, personally not so much, but I absolutely get why everyone who owns one loves it so much, and who doesn't own one would want one so much. I think it definitely is one of the best flagship this year. And yeah, not much you can do with it wrong, because it's pretty much flawless. If I would have to pick something bad, then it would be, first of all, bad on the highest possible level, which would be the distorting speaker, which I'm just mentioning because I am crazy into details, because that's a non-issue. And the not perfect blacks. Then maybe the not perfect gaming performance, but that's pretty much it. So as you see, this is nitpicking on a crazy high level, and I'm just mentioning it because, as I said, I'm a total nitpicker. Keep that in mind, and if there's anything else, leave the questions or comments down below. If you liked it, thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. If you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel. And I would say this was it for today. I wish you a nice something. Okay, until next time, bye.